The rain on planet Kirel 7 was sharp like glass. Cold winds howled between the broken hills. Leo pulled his coat tighter and walked faster. He just wanted to reach his camp before night came, but something stopped him halfway, something small. And shaking under a rock edge at first, he thought it was just an animal. But as he came closer, he saw her, a girl, or at least something close to it. She had glowing blue eyes, no tint, and wet silver hair stuck to her cheeks. Her skin was pale with strange markings across her arms. She didn't say a word. She just sat there, hugging her knees. Teeth chattering, Leo looked around, no one else in sight. He dropped his pack and knelt down. "Hey," he said gently, "you okay?" The girl looked at him but didn't answer. She looked scared, maybe of him, maybe of the storm. Leo opened his pack and pulled out a thermal bar. He offered it. She stared at it, then took it slowly with shaking hands. "Where's your tent?" Leo asked. She didn't respond, just looked down. "You'll freeze out here," he said. "Come with me." The girl blinked at him, confused. She opened her mouth, then closed it again. Finally, in a soft whisper, she said, "No one invites us inside." Leo raised an eyebrow. "Well," he said, "I guess I'm no one then." He held out his hand. The girl hesitated, then took it, her fingers ice cold. They walked together toward his small shelter, a makeshift dome near the rocks. Inside, it was warm and dry, powered by solar backup and heat coils. Leo motioned to the floor pad. "Sit here," he said, handing her a blanket. The girl moved slowly. Like every step hurt, she wrapped herself up, eyes scanning the shelter, like she was waiting for something to jump out. Leo poured warm liquid from his flask into a metal cup and passed it to her. She held it with both hands, drinking carefully. "What's your name?" he asked. She took a long time to answer. "Mira," she said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. Leo nodded. "I'm Leo," he replied. "You don't have to worry, okay? This place is safe." Myra didn't look convinced. She kept glancing at the door, flinching when thunder rolled through the sky. After a while, she spoke again. "You shouldn't have invited me." Leo blinked, surprised. "Why not?" he asked. "You were freezing out there." "They don't like it," she said quietly. "When one of us is taken in, who's they?" Leo asked, but Mira just hugged the blanket tighter. That night, Leo lay on one side of the shelter, Mira on the other. She didn't sleep. Not really. She sat curled up, staring at the wall, as if listening for something. Leo tried to stay awake, but eventually sleep pulled him down. Then came the knock. 3 soft taps on the outer dome wall. Leo's eyes snapped open. He sat up, heart racing. Tap, tap, tap. Then a voice, just outside. "Leo." "Let me in." Leo froze. The voice was his own, exactly like his, same tone, same speed. "Leo." "It's cold." "Let me in." He stood, legs shaking, walking toward the door, but Myra jumped up and blocked him. "Don't," she said sharply. "It's not you." "What?" Leo asked, confused. "That's not your voice," she whispered, her eyes wide with fear. "It's one of them. It smells warmth. It wants in." Leo looked toward the door. The voice continued to beg. "Mira," he said, "what is that?" She reached into her side pouch and pulled out 4 small stones, glowing faintly green. She placed them in a square around the inside of the tent. "They can't cross old lines," she said. "Not if they're real." Outside, the voice changed. Now it sounded like a child, then like a crying woman, then like laughter. Leo backed away, heart pounding. Mira held up her hand, and the stones grew brighter. Then she whispered something strange, words Leo didn't know. The dome shook once, then all fell quiet. No more voices, no more tapping, just silence. Heavy and strange, Mira collapsed back onto the floor. Breathing hard, Leo looked at her with wide eyes. What the hell was that? She didn't answer. She just stared at the roof and said, "You're part of it now." The wind outside had stopped, but the silence felt wrong, like the world was holding its breath. Leo sat near the heater, still trying to understand what had just happened. Mira sat cross-legged on the floor, the blanket around her shoulders, her skin still pale, her eyes glowing faintly in the dim light. He wanted to speak, ask questions, demand answers, but somehow he couldn't. Not yet. Mira looked like she was somewhere else, far away in her mind. Like she was remembering something she didn't want to remember. Her hands trembled, but not from cold anymore, from fear. After some minutes, she finally spoke, her voice flat. "You should not have heard them." Leo blinked. "The voices?" he asked. "They were using mine. How's that possible?" Mira didn't look at him. She stared at the stones she had placed on the ground, still glowing softly. "They don't have shape or sound of their own," she said. "They take from others. They feed on memory, warmth, and trust." Leo shivered. "What are they?" "They are old," she replied. "And they are hungry." He rubbed his hands together, trying to think. "So they live out there? In the rain?" "No," she whispered. "They come with the rain." Leo's mind raced. He had read reports of travelers vanishing on this planet, blamed on storms, rough terrain, even wild animals. But nothing like this, nothing that used your own voice against you. He stood up and started pacing. "Is that why you had no tent, no shelter? You were hiding from them?" Mira looked up at him for the first time, her eyes calm but tired. "I was hoping not to be noticed." "But you were out there completely exposed," Leo said, confused. "Wouldn't that make you an easy target?" "I was not the one they were hunting," she said slowly. "They were waiting for someone who would invite me in." Leo stopped moving. "You mean me?" She nodded. "You opened your door, gave warmth, gave trust, and now I'm—" "What? Marked?" he said, laughing nervously. Mira didn't laugh. She looked deadly serious. "Yes." Leo sat back down, trying to calm his breath. "You could have warned me," he said. "I did," she answered. "Before I stepped inside, I told you no one invites us." He remembered now, her exact words, her hesitant voice, the way she paused before walking into his shelter, and he realized he had ignored the warning because he didn't want to leave someone outside in the cold. "You said us," he said suddenly. "There are more like you." Mira looked at the floor, her fingers gripping the edge of the blanket. "There were," she whispered, "long ago." She wouldn't say more, and Leo didn't press her. The heater buzzed quietly, the only sound inside the shelter, outside. The wind had started again, soft at first, then building stronger, like it was searching for a way in. Mira stood slowly and walked toward the door, her head tilted, listening. "It's not over," she said. "They know you now." Leo stood beside her. "So what do we do?" "You survive the night," she said. "But there are rules." "Rules?" he asked. She turned to him, her face now serious, sharp, not scared anymore. "Do not speak if you hear your name. Do not open the door no matter what you hear. And do not dream." Leo frowned. "How do I stop myself from dreaming?" "You hold something real," she said, handing him a small stone from her pouch. It was warm to the touch, pulsing faintly like a heartbeat. "This will help keep your mind here." He took it, uncertain. "And what about you?" "I don't sleep," she said simply, and returned to her corner, sitting upright like a soldier guarding the gate of a castle. Hours passed, or maybe minutes. Time felt strange inside the shelter now. The heater flickered once, then steadied. Leo sat on his pad, holding the stone, trying not to blink too long, afraid that if he did, the dream would start. But sleep came anyway, like fog through a crack, soft, slow, creeping. In his dream, he was back on Earth, walking through his old neighborhood. People waved, dogs barked. Everything looked normal, but it felt wrong, like a painting made by someone who had never seen the real thing. He turned a corner and saw Mira there, dressed in glowing robes, standing in front of a mirror that reflected only darkness. She looked at him and said, "It's already inside." Leo woke up gasping, the stone burning hot in his hand. Mira rushed to him, placing another stone near his head. The air around them sizzled for a second, then settled, You almost slipped. She said, "They were pulling you." Leo wiped his forehead, heart pounding. "This is insane." Mira looked at him with sad eyes. "And the night is still long." Leo didn't know what was waiting in the next hour, but he was sure of one thing. He had invited something bigger than just a cold girl into his shelter, and nothing would be the same after this night. Leo sat with his back against the cold shelter wall, watching the glowing stones Myra had placed. They flickered like weak stars, too small to protect anything, too soft to scare off whatever was outside. He hadn't slept again. He didn't dare. Every time he blinked, he could hear whispers, and one of them sounded exactly like his mother. Across the shelter, Myra didn't move much. Her legs folded, her eyes open, her face quiet and still like she had been carved from stone. Leo didn't understand how she stayed awake for so long, how she wasn't breaking down like he was. The rain hadn't stopped. In fact, it grew louder, harder, like it wanted to punch holes through the walls of the shelter. Wind roared above them like angry beasts running through the sky, and yet, something deeper than all that howling was what chilled Leo the most, something he couldn't explain. Myra finally moved her hand and drew a small circle on the ground with her fingertip. It glowed dimly for a second, then vanished. Leo watched her in silence, not wanting to interrupt whatever she was doing. But then he heard it again, the knock tap. Tap, 3 soft, perfect knocks, no force, no anger, just knowing. Leo's heart jumped. He looked at Myra, but she didn't flinch, didn't speak. Her head slowly turned toward the entrance. Then the voice came, the same one as last night. "Leo, it's me, please open." But this time, it wasn't his voice. It was Myra's, sweet, soft, almost loving. "Please, I'm scared. Let me in." Leo gritted his teeth. He wanted to scream, wanted to yell that the real Myra was right there inside. But that's how it worked. It wanted him to forget, to react, to open the door without thinking. "It's copying you," Leo whispered to her, his voice shaky. "How is it copying you?" Myra's eyes locked with his, calm but full of warning. "Because it touched your dream," she said, "and I was in it." Leo realized then, every dream, every memory, every fear, it all became material for that thing outside. It used the pieces of your mind like tools, shaping them into weapons. Then came the second knock, louder than before, and a new voice, this one deeper, stronger, more demanding. "You invited her, human, but she is not yours." Leo stood up slowly, fists clenched. "What do you mean, not mine?" he asked without thinking. "She," Myra hissed, standing as well. "Don't speak to it." But the voice laughed, a cold laugh that crawled along the walls. "She belongs to the old lines. She carries the spark, and you, little flame keeper, you are not ready." Leo stared at Myra in confusion. "Spark? What spark?" But before she could answer, the ground under their feet shivered. Not a quake, but something like breath, like the earth itself was breathing. The shelter lights dimmed, then flared back to life. Myra dropped to her knees and pulled something from her pouch, a flat black disc, smooth and cold-looking. She placed it between them and whispered something in that same old language again. The disc lit up and showed something, not a map, not a message, images. Living memories, maybe hers, maybe someone else's. A tower made of crystal shattered under a black sun. Winged creatures screamed across a burning sky, and in the center, a figure with glowing lines across their skin stood alone, hand raised high like they were holding back the end of the world. Leo felt heat on his chest and looked down. The stone Myra had given him was glowing bright, pulsing fast. "You weren't supposed to see this yet," Myra whispered. "But the thing outside, it knows now. It wants the mark you carry." Leo backed away, panic rising. "I don't want it," he said. "Take it back." "I can't," she said. "You were chosen when you opened the door." The voice outside grew louder, now angry, roaring. "Give her up, and you walk away untouched." Leo turned to Myra, his face pale. "Is it telling the truth?" She didn't answer. She just stood and walked toward the entrance slowly, her hands raised not to open, but to press her palm against the wall. The shelter wall turned transparent, and for a few seconds, Leo saw what stood outside. A tall, thin creature with no face, its body made of swirling shadows. Hundreds of eyes shifting across its surface, mouths opening in places where no mouth should be. It reached toward the door, its fingers long like smoke, tapping once, twice, 3 times. Then Mira whispered something again, louder this time, and her body glowed with a white light that burned the air. The shadow screamed without sound and disappeared like dust and wind. The wall returned to normal, and Mira collapsed to her knees, coughing. Leo rushed to her side, catching her before she hit the floor. "Are you okay?" She nodded weakly. "I pushed it back, but not for long." Leo held her in silence, his heart pounding, his hands shaking. Tonight had been worse than the last, and he knew now this wasn't going to stop. Not until something broke, not until a choice was made. And deep down, he feared the weirdest part of this night hadn't even come yet. The storm had passed, but the sky was still gray, the ground soaked and steaming under the weak morning light. Leo sat outside the shelter with his knees drawn up, staring at nothing, his fingers tight around the warm stone Mira gave him. He hadn't said a word since she drove the creature away. Inside the shelter, Mira slept for the first time, her breathing soft, her hands tucked under her head like a child. Even with her face peaceful, Leo could see it. She wasn't just some lost alien girl. She was something else entirely, something ancient, something dangerous. He looked down at his chest. Stone was quiet now, but he could still feel it pulsing under his skin. Like it had left something behind, not just warmth, but a connection. He wasn't the same man who had opened his tent to a stranger in the rain. When Mira woke, she sat up slowly and looked at him through the open flap of the shelter. Her voice was hoarse. "Did it come back?" Leo shook his head. "No," he said, "but I saw something else." Mira crawled to the entrance and sat beside him, her hair still wet at the ends, her silver eyes watching him carefully. "What did you see?" He hesitated, then pointed toward a tree at the edge of the ridge. "A symbol," he said, "burned into the bark, same one I saw on that disc of yours." She stood quickly and walked over. Leo followed her in silence. They stopped in front of the tree. The symbol was black and charred, even though the bark around it was untouched. 3 lines crossed by one curved stroke, like a bird in flight or a flame bending in the wind. Mira touched it gently, and the air around them grew heavy. "They marked you," she said quietly. "It means you're tied to me now." Leo took a step back. "I didn't agree to that." She turned to him, her voice calm but serious. "You did, the moment you opened the door." He didn't like that answer, but it made sense in a strange way. Ever since she stepped into his shelter, things had changed. The air felt different. The night whispered things it never used to. His dreams had become strange and sharp. Mira traced the symbol with her finger again, then turned away. "We should leave soon. Others will come." "Others like that thing last night?" Leo asked. She shook her head. "Worse." Leo didn't ask for more. Instead, they packed quickly. Loading his supplies and rolling up the shelter, they traveled through the rocky trail in silence, moving away from the hills and toward the deep valleys known as the Stormlands, places even the bravest avoided. After hours of walking, they found a dry cave behind a waterfall of mist. Mira checked it with her stones before letting Leo enter. Inside, she drew a circle again, placing the stones like before. Leo sat near the wall, exhausted. "You said I was marked, but what does that really mean?" She didn't answer right away. Instead, she lit a small flame in her palm and stared into it. "It means you're one of us now." "But I'm human," he said. "What does that even mean to you?" She looked up at him. "You carry the spark now, just like I do." He frowned. "Spark? You keep saying that." Mira stood and walked over, placing her hand near his chest without touching. The stone in his pocket began to glow again. "The spark is a gift, a curse, a link to the First light of the stars, only a few have ever held it. Leo felt heat moving through his veins, his fingertips tingled, his vision sharpened for a second. Then faded. He blinked and stared at her. "I didn't ask for this. No one ever does," she replied. "But now it's yours." They sat in silence again. The only sound was the soft hum of the glowing stones. But something began to shift outside, a feeling in the air, like pressure before lightning strikes. Mira stood fast and pulled Leo up. "They found us." "Who?" he asked, grabbing his pack, but before she could answer, a red beam of light shot through the cave entrance, missing Mira's head by inches. They both dropped to the ground. The stones around the circle flared brightly, a shield forming between them and the outside. Mira's voice dropped to a whisper. "They're not shadows this time. They're hunters." Leo's heart pounded. He peeked through the crack in the cave wall and saw dark figures in armor with glowing visors moving through the mist like ghosts. "Why are they after you?" he asked. Mira looked at him with calm eyes that held deep pain. "Because I was supposed to die years ago." Leo couldn't believe what he was hearing, but something inside told him this was only the beginning. He tightened the strap of his bag, gripped the warm stone in his pocket, and nodded once. He didn't know why, but he wasn't running away anymore. The cave smelled like burned metal. The air was thick with smoke and sparks. Mira stood with one hand stretched toward the barrier of light, holding it in place, her fingers trembling. Leo stayed close beside her, sweat running down his neck. Outside, red beams lit up the fog, cutting into the ground, turning stone to dust. The hunters didn't speak. They didn't shout orders or fire randomly. They moved like they already knew where their prey was hiding, like they had been waiting years for this very moment. Leo peeked again and counted at least 4 of them, their armor black with red lines pulsing along their arms and helmets. Their boots didn't even touch the ground. One of them raised his arm and aimed a long, thin weapon straight at the barrier. Mira gritted her teeth and shouted a single word in that strange language. The shield flared bright white, deflecting the beam with a hiss, but Mira stumbled backward, coughing blood into her hand. Leo caught her before she fell. "You're pushing too hard," he said. "They're gonna break through." She nodded weakly. "Then we don't wait," she whispered. "We run." "But how?" Leo asked, looking around the cave. "We're trapped." Mira reached into her belt pouch and pulled out a glowing disc. She slammed it against the wall behind them. It stuck, blinked twice, then exploded without a sound. A new path opened behind. The blast narrow, dark, but real. "This leads to the old tunnels," she said, grabbing his arm. "Hurry." They ran through the smoke, the cave trembling behind them as the hunters fired again, beams slicing through the space they'd just escaped. The new tunnel was tight, barely wide enough for Leo's shoulders. And the further they went, the colder it got. He could barely see Mira ahead, her outline glowing faintly, guiding him. They didn't speak, they didn't stop. Time lost meaning. As the tunnel twisted down, deeper and deeper into the mountain, finally, they reached a wide chamber lit by pale crystals growing from the walls. Mira collapsed to her knees, her face pale, her body shaking. Leo dropped beside her, breathing hard. "Why are they hunting you?" he asked again, more firmly this time. "What did you do?" Mira didn't answer right away. She looked around the chamber like it was familiar, like it hurt to remember. She finally whispered, "I was born to lead, not to live." Leo frowned. "What does that mean?" She reached out and touched one of the crystals, her palm glowing against it. A soft hum filled the chamber, and slowly, images began to form in the air. Not like the disc from before. These were sharper, brighter, clearer. He saw a grand hall, filled with alien faces, soldiers kneeling before a young girl with silver eyes. He saw crowds cheering, then fires burning, chains snapping, shadows swallowing the throne, and the girl falling from the sky like a comet. "That's you," Leo said, watching the memories move like wind. "You were their queen." "I still..." She said bitterly, "but only in name, not in power." Leo stood and walked in a slow circle around the images. Then who are the hunters? He asked. Rebels? Mira shook her head. Guardians, sworn to protect the throne. They believe I've betrayed it by living. That's insane, Leo said. They're trying to kill the one they're supposed to protect. To them, I died years ago. She said, anyone who returns from death is a curse, not a queen. Leo didn't know what to say. He sat down beside her again, staring at the images fading from the air. Mira pulled her knees close to her chest, her voice quieter now. They say my blood is dangerous. It holds light no one else carries. Even my own people feared it. Leo looked at her, something in his chest twisting. And yet, I invited you in without knowing anything. She turned to him slowly, her silver eyes tired. You didn't see a queen or a curse. You saw someone cold and alone. Yeah, he said softly. And now I've got hunters trying to kill me too. A small smile touched her lips. The first he'd seen. That part wasn't planned, she said. Leo chuckled bitterly, then grew serious again. What now? She stood slowly, walking to the far wall of the chamber, pressing her hand against a smooth stone. A section slid open, revealing steps leading even deeper. A faint golden light coming from below. We find the machine, she said. If it still works, it may be our only chance. Leo stared into the passage, his fingers tightening around the stone in his pocket. What kind of machine? She didn't turn around. One that can open a path to the stars, or destroy everything that remembers me. For a moment, neither of them moved. The chamber quiet again, except for the hum of fading crystals. Leo knew then his night in the tent had become something much bigger. He hadn't just invited a girl into shelter. He had opened the door to a storm that had waited lifetimes to rise, and it was far from over. The stairs felt endless. The deeper Jake followed V, the warmer the air became. It was strange outside. The world was cold and full of dust, but down here, the stone walls seemed to breathe heat. Each step echoed like a heartbeat. Slow and steady, V moved ahead, her silver hair glowing faintly in the golden light rising from below. Jake had stopped asking questions, not because he didn't have any, but because he wasn't sure he could understand the answers anymore. She had been a weapon, a queen, a discarded creation, and now she was something else entirely. He followed her not out of duty, but because something inside him knew he was already part of whatever came next. When they reached the final step, the chamber opened wide, and Jake's breath caught in his throat. The room was massive round, with high ceilings that seemed to touch the sky even beneath the mountain. At the center stood a machine unlike anything he had ever seen. It looked like a tree made of light and metal, its roots buried deep into the stone, its branches reaching toward the ceiling. Pulsing slowly, symbols moved across its surface like flowing water, glowing and shifting. As if they were alive, V stepped toward it and placed her hand on the core. The machine responded instantly, sending out a soft hum that vibrated through the floor and into Jake's bones. It still remembers me, she whispered, her voice sounding distant. Jake walked up beside her carefully, eyes wide. What is this place? V didn't turn to look at him. This is the core of my people's oldest weapon. Or their final hope, Jake frowned. Which one is it now? She finally turned, her eyes glowing with gold light now instead of silver. That depends on what I choose, she said. He stared at her, unsure if he should feel fear or wonder. The machine shifted again, a ring of light spinning around them slowly, scanning them both. Then a low voice echoed in the chamber. Mechanical but not lifeless. DNA match confirmed. Status. Queen reactivated. Jake took a step back. It's calling you queen again. V nodded slowly. It never stopped. I just stopped listening. Suddenly the ground trembled. A warning pulse ran through the air, from far above. A sound echoed down through the stone, a heavy crack. A roar. They found the path, V said. The hunters are coming. Jake turned toward the stairway, gripping the flare gun again. Can this machine fight? V walked to the center of the core, stepping onto a platform that lifted her slowly into the air. "It doesn't fight," she said. "It awakens." Light spread through the room like a storm, symbols flying through the air, wrapping around. Her body like armor, her feet lifted off the ground, hair floating, eyes burning with power. Jake shielded his face as the machine let out a deep pulse. Shaking the walls, then everything went still. V floated gently back to the floor. Now wrapped in glowing light, her voice layered with power. "They won't take us easily now," she said. Jake stared, stunned. What did you just do?" "I called the star map," she said. "It will open the ancient door. One that leads far from here." Before Jake could speak again, the stairs behind them cracked, dust pouring down like rain. The hunters were too close. "Go," V said, pointing toward a hidden tunnel behind the machine. "That path leads to the launch chamber." Jake hesitated. "What about you?" She smiled gently. "I'll hold them long enough. I have to finish what I started." Jake's fists clenched. "I didn't bring you into my tent just to watch you die now." V walked to him and gently pressed something into his hand. It was a small glowing crystal, warm and humming softly. "If I fall," she whispered, "that will guide you to safety. But if I live, I'll come for you." Jake looked down at the crystal, then back at her. She turned toward the stairs, hands glowing brighter now, the chamber pulsing with light. He ran toward the tunnel, heart pounding, air burning in his lungs, as he disappeared into the shadows. A blast of energy lit up the chamber behind him, followed by a roar like thunder. He didn't look back. He couldn't, because for the first time, he was afraid not for himself, but for the girl who had changed everything. And somewhere deep inside, he hoped this wasn't the end. Not of her, not of them, not of the story that began with one small invitation, and the strangest night of his life. Jake ran through the narrow tunnel, the glowing crystal in his hand pulsing with soft warmth. Each step echoed behind him, but he couldn't tell if it was his own footsteps or the hunters catching up. The air grew colder, then warmer again, like the walls were alive and breathing. He didn't stop, not even when his legs begged for rest, not even when the tunnel twisted like a serpent beneath the mountain. Finally, the tunnel opened into a giant chamber. The walls curved inwards like the inside of a sphere, and above him floated something he had never seen, a ship, or a seed, or maybe both. It hovered silently, covered in thin lines of silver light, waiting like it had been asleep for centuries. Jake approached carefully, holding the crystal close to his chest. A panel opened in the floor, glowing softly, shaped perfectly for the crystal. He placed it in, and the chamber answered with a hum so deep it made his teeth ache. The floating ship came to life, lights blooming across its surface. One by one, a low voice, different from the machine before, echoed around him. "Star key accepted. Launch. Protocol ready, awaiting Queen's presence." Jake's heart dropped. He looked back at the tunnel behind him. She wasn't there. Dust floated down from the ceiling, and the sound of distant battle echoed through the stone. He gritted his teeth, fists clenched. "She's coming," he said to the ship. "She promised." The chamber was silent again, like it was listening. Then he heard its footsteps, fast and sharp. Growing louder, Jake turned, ready for anything. But it wasn't the hunters. It was V. Her clothes were torn, her arm burned, but her eyes were brighter than ever before. She stumbled, but didn't fall. Jake ran to her, catching her just in time. "You're alive," he said, breathless. "I told you I'd come," she said with a tired smile. Behind them, the tunnel collapsed in a thunder of stone, ceiling. The way forever. They only had one path left. V looked at the glowing ship and nodded. This was built for people like me, but it was never meant to fly alone." Jake helped her to the platform, and together they stepped into the light. The ship accepted them without question, doors sliding open, air warm and calm inside. As they entered, vines of light wrapped gently around their arms, not to restrain, but to welcome. The ship responded to V's presence like a child to its mother. She sat in the center, resting her hand on the control stone. The lights pulsed in rhythm with her heartbeat. Jake took a seat beside her. No idea where they were going, but knowing. It didn't matter. The voice returned, clearer now, almost human. Coordinates locked. Departure in 10 seconds. V looked at him, eyes soft. You should know. Once we leave, we can't come back. Jake smiled. I didn't belong here anyway. She reached out and took his hand, her touch warm, real. The ship began to rise, the chamber crumbling below, above them. The stone roof opened like a blooming flower, revealing the sky. The stars waited silently, distant but welcoming. The engines didn't roar, they whispered. As they left the ground, V leaned her head against Jake's shoulder. He looked out the window, the strange planet already growing smaller. What happens now? He asked quietly. V closed her eyes. Now, we go write the rest of the story. In the silence of space, wrapped in warmth and golden light, two beings who were never meant to meet drifted forward together, one human, one alien, no longer strangers, no longer lost. Just a boy who invited a tentless girl into his shelter and found a galaxy instead.